I'm doing the introduction today. So what I'll do is I'll say we've got Jake Smith. He's on the Delmarva Peninsula, and Bill Colley. I am in southern Idaho in the Magic Valley, beautiful Magic Valley, where all the colors this time of year are either white, gray, or brown. It is just lovely. Jake, we've got a lot to talk about today, and I'm just winging the introduction. We need to point that out. We don't script anything.
No, nope. This is shooting from the hip. That's what this podcast is, Bill.
We should have called it that.
Well, yeah. Yesterday, I produced a monologue for my show, which I read live. I normally don't do that. And, there's a lot of reasons for that. There's production value in producing it ahead of time. We know how much time it's going to be. And reading it out loud, you can always flub a word here or there. But I read it because I thought it was the right thing to do yesterday. And having said that, it was all about the battle, the civil war that we're fighting right now in this country. Now, you can say what you want. And I've been talking about it for a couple of years now. At some point, we're going to have a Fort Sumter moment in this latest civil war. Was a stolen election for which they're basically flipping us the bird saying, we've stolen this election and there's nothing you can do about it. You'll never find any trace of evidence, no matter how, it's stolen, but guess what? Every time you go to the polls now, you will wonder whether that election is for real or it's fake. And I think that if there was a Fort Sumter moment, we may have seen it, Bill. What do you think?
I agree. And what you brought up, they keep saying, where's your evidence? Well, we have bits of evidence, a little here, a little here, a little here, a little right. There.
Exactly.
But their challenges, they're telling us to put like sticks, like Tinker Toys between all of these and show us some sort of grand scheme that the liberals had, the grand plan that they had to hijack this election.
Right.
But you see 50 states and 50 systems, they know better. They know that you can't really do that. This was a diffuse plan that they had. But here's just some of the examples.
No question about it.
This is from a newspaper out of Las Vegas. They have two papers. One is liberal. This is the Review Journal. This is for conservatives.
Okay.
Salt Lake City, by the way, has two papers in the same vein, and the liberal one is going out of business on December 31st. So thank the Lord for small miracles. But the writer of this column says he signed off on 8 ballots, and they were all accepted. Now he didn't want to break the law, so he had friends sit down with him, and what they did is he wrote their names out, and then what they did is they tried their best to copy his signature with their names.
How interesting!
Submitted the ballots, so it's his handwriting, and all 8 ballots were accepted, just the signatures alone. And he says if this is what he could get away with, think what someone who actually had a serious plan could get away with in Clark County, Nevada, which turned that state. If you look at the election map in Nevada, which is, I'm a half-hour drive from Jackpot, Nevada. Mm-hmm. If you look at that map, Elko County to our south, red. Everything is red except for Reno and Clark County, which is metropolitan Las Vegas.
Bill, this is, I think, the biggest issue surrounding the theft of this election is the future. We had a greater turnout in this presidential election season, perhaps the greatest turnout of all time. What do we normally average? About 56% nationally turnout. This turnout had to be 80 to 90% of Americans who turned out. People waited online for hours to vote. They saw with their own eyes what the response was to President Trump's message on November 3rd. Now, here's what I said yesterday on this monologue. Let's listen to this. It's about a 30-second cut. I want to get your response. In modern times, our elections were the only weapon at our disposal against the enemies of freedom. If that weapon has been extinguished, how do we fight in the future? I will answer that question for you. We will not fight in the future. Our enemies, foreign and domestic, know full well that taking away our power at the polls, that eliminating the one man who was protecting us, for shutting down the best hope of eliminating the Delaware way, it is they who have won our latest civil war. That is, unless our game plan changes. In modern times. All right, so that's what I said yesterday, Bill. The psychological. Now, you always, in warfare, there's always the psychological aspect of beating down your enemies, the psychological advantage in warfare. Think about the psychological advantage of taking away from us the one weapon that we had to fight back against them, against the socialists, against the Marxists, and that was our elections. The further they were from the mainstream, the more that could be pointed out in our election, in our campaigns, and in our election process, and voters of the right mind would go to the polls and say, we don't want this country going down that road. Well, now that's been taken away. So what do you think about my the cut that I just played there, and what should our response be? Because if we don't have a response, we've lost.
We don't have a media that's willing to stand up and challenge. I heard an interview that it'll be airing the full interview tomorrow night on 60 Minutes, but Scott Pelley was interviewing Barack Obama, and I caught a clip of this yesterday morning. And Pelley's question is about how the Republicans are making all of these wacky claims, and how do you overcome that, Mr. President? Well, he didn't say. Pelley has already moved to the point where we're not going to investigate any of this. We as journalists don't bother to do that any longer.
Fake news.
So we have no one really on our side. You make a great point. I read this morning, there's a column in the New Yorker called The Intelligencer. The former writer of that column.
Over in the New Yorker, Bill, The Intelligencer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The Andrew Sullivan, who used to write it, he got fed up with the magazine and quit. And he left because he wasn't quite liberal enough for them. Not that he's a conservative, but he wasn't liberal enough. But I read in that column today, and also a column at the Federalist. So you've got liberal New Yorker and the conservative Federalist are both saying that as they're crunching the numbers in votes, it turns out Donald Trump his support among suburban women, which was supposedly flagging, actually grew. In fact, he grew in support in every demographic except for white men, where he was level. If that be the case, then how come he's not the winner of this election? How come all of a sudden all of these other votes appeared? I mean, to me, it's obvious. And I realize people on the left will scream, where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? And as long as they have
people that were telling us that Russia was true, Bill, they were telling us for 4 years that the Russia hoax was true. Are those the same people now that are demanding to hear evidence from us?
Well, your Fort Sumter comment, it's going to happen. And I do believe that you will see a great split. And I've talked about this with folks on my own radio program, and I've gone back and forth. Do I think the country will split up? And I've said some days I think it's possible, some days I think no. But I think it's very possible now. We're back in stage 2 here, for instance, with coronavirus restrictions and with a Republican governor. And I'm reading the chatter, and we're no longer getting these messages that say, we're all in this together. They've given up on all of that because they know
that your Facebook post.
Right. In flyover country, this is not selling any longer. And the election results aren't going to sell. It's going to be, what's going to happen is in some county, maybe in Nebraska or Oklahoma or eastern or North Idaho, it's going to happen here. Somebody is going to do something, and the immediate reaction will be, we've got to put that down. But all of a sudden, you'll see sheriffs starting to stand behind the people. And then all of a sudden, you will not be able to get the National Guard out to follow the governor's directions. And simply, it's just going to fall apart. And I don't think the liberals have the wherewithal. This is where I think they've overplayed their hand. They can't put it back together.
Agreed. And you brought up a good point. You saw what's happening in Minneapolis now. They're hiring police officers, part-time, whatever, to come in and put down the massive surge in crime. Gee, we couldn't have predicted that. But what if the majority of Americans, you want to defund the police, AOC? Okay, now we are going to elect sheriffs that are going to be providing us with the protection that we need in our communities. Police not under your control, sheriffs who answer to the voters. Could that be in the increase in the United States of America? What say you?
Yes, my own sheriff, who I consider to be a conservative Republican, but I wouldn't call him. He's not out there on the fringe whatsoever. But he's now a member of the conservative or constitutional sheriffs of America, I believe is what they call themselves. We had a sheriff in North Idaho a few years ago, an old Navy veteran. The government came in and said, well, because this guy, he's old and he's having difficulty with his health, we're here to take his guns away. And the local sheriff and his deputies turned out, put a cordon around the house and told these federal agents, sorry, not happening. This guy's a good, upstanding member of this community.
More and more response on the part of sheriffs across the country like that, Bill, correct?
And I think it's going to happen because these sheriffs, the effort to try to nationalize the police force is really one of the goals of the liberals, because
no question.
They can send in brown shirts from other parts of the country. But if you maintain control with your own sheriff, and your own local council appoints your own police chief and you vote for that council, these people live in my neighborhoods and they're not going to go against me in that type of situation. Oh, there may be some initial, yeah, we've got a job to do, and they'll do it grudgingly, but there's going to be a break point for all of them. And that's going to be the moment when they just simply say no.
I sent you 2 days ago one of my monologues. It was called Accountability. It was about the Trump Accountability Project. Now, uh, I was a rock and roll disc jockey for years. I also produced talk radio, but I wasn't a talk radio host. Bill is my mentor. So once in a while, I send things to him and I want him, yes, that's right. You can look around all you want, sir. But as far as talk radio is concerned, I learned everything from this gentleman here that's sitting at the other screen in the other studio.
We don't have much to talk about, I guess.
The Squad, the Princess of Marxism, Alexandria Cortez, and her other Marxists, they want to create basically an online red channels book for you and me. Anyone who has supported President Trump in any way, shape, or form is going to be placed in virtual internment camps, Bill. I said that. I stand by it. I posted something earlier today on Boardwalk Potatoes. What say you?
And good grief, Robert Reich, who was labor secretary under Bill Clinton, is saying we need.
That's about 3 foot tall.
Yeah,
He looks like a munchkin.
Sounds like one too.
I think Reich calls him Robert Reich or something. Yeah.
With a last name like that, I'm sure that he's got a lot of plans in store for people he doesn't like.
Oh, yeah. hopefully his first name isn't third.
Yes. He wants a Truth and Reconciliation Committee, and you're thinking, for what? Yeah. I mean, for what?
Did you have one for Obama?
Yeah, let's if we're going to do
one
this,
for Obama.
Let's be fair. Then we can get to the bottom of what the IRS did. They're talking about doing this, and first it started with some DNC staffers said we need to go after the people who worked in the Trump White House, and then somebody said we need to go after the lawyers who are working in Trump in his appeals on the electoral fraud.
Right.
And then somebody said we need to go after all those people who voted for Donald Trump. Well, 71 million now this time around. Good grief, how are they going to lock us all up?
Well, virtual internment camps, which means getting information out on social media, on the internet, that we were supporters of Trump, that we should lose our jobs, lose our ability to earn a living, not get access to the school that we want to go to, the university that we want to go to, not get access to the club that we want to go to. We should be put in a virtual internment camp. That's what they mean to do, and that's what they're trying to do.
It's a little bit like the Cultural Revolution in China, and then once you sign a confession, they may either kill you or turn you around and tell you.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, your life will never be the same again, Bill. That's really what they want to do.
So you sign this confession, and then they'll make a decision on whether you can return to polite society as they deem it or not. That's essentially what happened there. Some people signed their confessions and still died. Right. Others were given menial jobs and allowed to live out their lives.
Camps. Beijing has prison camps. They have internment camps. If you're a Muslim in China, do you think you walk the streets? No, you go to an internment camp.
Well, when I last week saw a story, and it came from the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is really not Southern. It's much more what you'd call almost a
Poverty Law Center or something like that. Yeah,
it's got more of a Manhattan feel to it. It's not impoverished by any means. They put out a list of legislators across the country who got elected, whether to Congress or to state offices. And I was reading through this, and they mention a couple of people in Georgia, and then they mention a few in other parts of the country. Greg Gianforte, a Republican, got elected. He's moving from the House over to governor of Montana, which, by the way, luckily is becoming much more red again. And then there was this massive section on several Idaho legislators, I believe 4 of them, plus a 5th who lost his race. And I know all 5 of these people. I've had my pictures taken with them. So that's already available on social media. And essentially that they're being blackballed by the SPLC because they've had their picture taken at a gun rally, or because they did not support same-sex marriage, or they don't believe that 8-year-old boys who think they're girls should be mutilated. They think that, that we should allow these boys to see if they can grow out of it first. These are the types of things they're on this list for. And one of my friends, well, she's actually a close friend of our friend Helen McCaffrey, but
yes,
a mutual friend of Helen and mine ended up on the list. And she told me, she said, I'm a little worried that someone's going to be showing up at my door because previous lists have resulted in an attack on the Family Research Council in Washington. And so now there is going to be a group of people organizing here to support these legislators who have been targeted. They're walking around with targets on their backs because of what this liberal anti-Christian organization has done.
And again, it's the same concept as this virtual internment camp. You've got a mark on your back. You've got an X on your back. You're a target. Now, is AOC a target? No. I mean, Bill, you got to admit, since Election Day, she's feeling the power in her veins pulsing right now. She is more powerful than she's ever been. And I don't want to hear about Joe Manchin's nonsense or any of the other ones. She's wielding a lot of power on the Socialist Democrat side right now in the House of Representatives. You agree?
Well, and they sound like they're ready to fight, where the old guard, which is not quite as wacky left, doesn't have it in them. You know, Joe Manchin is in his 70s, Pelosi's 80, Steny Hoyer is nearly 80. These people they don't have the energy to go through with this. And so you've got all of these young.
Who's going to fight them, Bill? I mean,
there's very little way that anyone's going to fight them within the Democrat ranks.
Right.
And so they'll slowly take over at the committee level. And that's where the real power is going to be, because they'll show up and they'll take over these committees, and they'll just frighten with their language and their shouting. They'll frighten the old timers out, and you'll see them lay down that grid across the country. And then they're going to try to take over with their own legislative wins and victories. They'll start, of course, well, they're already working at school board level and the like through Soros and others and district attorneys to build that up and move that direction.
Well, and move the Black Lives Matter curriculum to the forefront, which is what's coming, Bill. If you have children in school, this Black Lives Matter curriculum is coming very soon to a school district near you.
In fact, in a district in Wisconsin, BLM took over a meeting the other night. I'm reminded of the Fabian socialists who believe that they would achieve their goals, but slowly and incrementally. This group has moved beyond the Fabianism of the Democrat Party and has now essentially moved over into the Bolshevik realm. That's really what we're dealing with.
You know, and I always thought Fabianism meant turn me loose. I guess that's not that way anymore, right? Now, Bill, I have to ask you, yesterday I played Justice Alito's speech from this week. Very sobering comments from someone I feel is stepping forward now to become the conservative justice on the court, the outspoken conservative voice of the court, the conservative conscience of the court in replacing Justice Scalia. I think that Judge Alito now is doing that. It appears that way to me, and his speech this week should have scared the daylights out of all of us. What do you think?
You know, they both had Italian mothers and went to Catholic school. There's a little bit of what you might call a symmetry there, and it shows in their formation, which is a very strict and very traditional approach to looking at life, but as well as our own Constitution. I find it interesting that you've got a lot of liberals who are bashing him for speaking out, but they were okay when Ginsburg did that. But if he continues, this is that public.
At the beginning of the speech, he said, "I know they're going to bash me for this, but oh, here it comes." He said that. So
he's the guy that if because he will at least draw the television cameras and the internet attention, whether they attack him or not, he's going to be able to get his message out. It's a little like Ronald Reagan was able to talk over the top of all of that noise.
That's true. That's a great point. Yeah, but do you remember when Obama was giving a State of the Union message and he was attacking the Supreme Court, and Judge Alito sat there and he shook his head, no, no, no. And do you remember how powerful, even though you could read his lips and you saw him turning his head, no, no, no. Remember how powerful that pushback was. All he did was shake his head and say no. We could read his lips. And yet we knew that Justice Alito was one who stood up for our traditional values in this country, strictly by the way that he pushed back against Barry at that State of the Union message. I don't remember what year it was, but I do remember what Alito did.
Early on in Obama's, I think it was in his first term. And when I saw that, of course, mainstream media didn't like it and immediately took Obama's side.
Of course, what else?
We've had imperial presidencies going back to Roosevelt, who the media adored as well. But I think what Alito was sitting there saying is, hey, dude, The 9 of us, we're a co-equal branch. You're not the boss. And you're also in the house of another co-equal branch. You're not the boss. And we need more of those voices too, because Joe Biden's going to come along and try to, he's going to get rid of a lot of the efforts that President Trump made to deregulate business, and he's going to stop construction of the wall and all of these other things. But at some point, you've got to remind the guy, you're just one of 3 branches. You're not above the other 2. And in many ways, we're all guilty of allowing that to happen in this country.
No question about it. We're all guilty.
Executive. Yeah. And the executive controls all of these 3 and 4 letter agencies, and they've got their enabling legislation. They make their own what they call regulations, but that's law without our consent.
Judge Alito talked about that in his speech this week. He talked about that.
Right. If we could turn around and I know Congress feels maybe they'd be overwhelmed if they had to pick all that back up.
Oh, well, that's what they get paid for. Right now they're working 3 days a week. Is it any different? Bill, you've been to Reagan Airport on a Thursday. Where are they all heading? They're going home.
Yeah. And it's interesting because
they come back during the day on Monday and they start working on Tuesday. They work Tuesday, Wednesday, part of Thursday, and then they're out of there. Come on. What nonsense is this?
Some of the guys who don't like each other also sit with each other, supposedly going back home on flights. So,
no. For one time, I was at Reagan Airport and Dick Gephardt tried to cut in front of me on the security line. I went nuts. Who are you to cut in front of me? What the hell did he think he was doing?
He always looked like Jim Carrey's Fire Marshal Bill.
Well, Bill, I think we're going to have a lot to talk about in the coming days, especially in Georgia. There, obviously, the control of the Senate is that those who stole this election are now focusing in on stealing Georgia. We heard what Chucky Schumer said last Sunday. We're going to take Georgia and we're going to take over the world. He said it. And then he stands up in front of the Senate the next day and say, well, we all have to be friends with one another again and cut the rhetoric and stop the nasty talk. Right. We're going to take Georgia and we're going to take over the world. Chuck Schumer said it. I played it on my show, Bill, all week. What do you think?
Chuck Schumer has been a closet Bolshevik. He's played the role of claiming to be a moderate and in that mainstream, as he likes to say. But he's really AOC's godfather and very dangerous individual.
Yeah, I agree. But he's going to lose his Senate seat. As soon as she says, I want to be senator, Chucky is out of there. You agree?
I think so. She does not have what you'd call, in the old traditional sense, political loyalties. Here's our goal and get out of our way. That's what they're telling all of these old timers.
Right. Agreed. Well, William, it's been great talking with you. We certainly have a lot to talk about in the coming days. But I think my final message, the way I'd like to wrap up this discussion on my side this morning, is to tell people not to give up. We're not finished yet. Keep praying. That God can work miracles. And I can't tell you how many people have gotten in contact with me via my show, other means, to tell me that they are praying for a miracle. Miracles happen and they come from above, and we cannot give up. God has a plan. We may not like what the answer to those prayers are now, but I guarantee you the people who've done this will pay. They will pay. They may pay now, they may pay in a few years from now, but clearly, unless we change the playbook, our playbook, not much is going to change, and we're probably looking at a nation that will never recover from this. Bill, your final thoughts.
Well, I'm going to do something much more because I'll fill in all the blanks next week. If people want to actually hear you during the week, it's WGMD.com. There's a listen live icon, and you are on the air 9 a.m. until noon Eastern time. You're the lead into the Rush Limbaugh program, and they can listen to your show. It is it would rival anything, I think, in syndication across the country.
Wow,
with the preparation and the sound. Number 2, I know that I'm just telling them to listen to you, and we're pretty much on at the same time because I'm in the Mountain Time Zone and I'm Rush's lead-in, but I'm on the air Mountain Time 6 until 10 a.m. Monday through Friday. And newsradio1310.com is our website with a listen live icon as well. So people can listen to both of our shows. We'd prefer, of course, too, that they click on that subscribe button at the top of the page of Boardwalk Potatoes.
Subscribe to Boardwalk Potatoes. That's very important. Well, William, God bless you, sir. Thank you. And I will talk to you very, very soon. Let's not give up, my friends. We still have some fight left in us. And remember, God is always on the side of honesty and integrity.
Amen.
Bill, talk to you soon.
You
And
too.
for Bill Colley, I'm Jake Smith, Boardwalk Potatoes. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning into our podcast.